Okay, so everybody, welcome again. This is Christophe, Clugston, and Ken O'Neill, and we're going to be talking about the martial arts journey. And we've got one guy already online, and we're trying to get another one. We didn't have as many people as we thought that could technically make it here, so I don't know what the problem is, but I'm having a problem here at my end. So I guess the thing to do is to start out with the fact that people started martial arts at one place, but usually they end up doing something else different from what they started in. And I don't quite remember what did you start in, Ken, originally?
First thing I did, actually, and I consider this still some of the most real stuff I ever did going through my journey, but good old hardcore high school wrestling was my first martial thing I ever did, sport-wise. Then from that, I went right into Okinawan karate in my senior year of high school. And then it was within the next couple of years, I was in college, I did some fencing, I did a little taekwondo, and then I met Stan Brooks kicking that football shield and recognized that as Bruce Lee's sidekick and went running down the stairs to go figure out who he was.
So what Okinawan were you doing? Goju or Ishinryu? Was that what you're doing?
Shorin-ryu.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, they're all related. They're all related because when I was 14, when I was training, he had gung fu. He was from a southern gung fu eclectic style. But before that, he'd done Ishinryu and Goju-ryu and had black belts in that. He had been in the Vietnam War, and he was kind of influential to me for a while. He was trying to be a realistic, but he was just he just didn't it wasn't the same like Mike. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he hadn't gotten that to that spot.
Sure, not many had.
Yeah. But anyway, so I mean and now what was your when you started doing everything like professionally, as in you were a professional teacher, where did that lead you? What did you do? What were you doing, during that period?
You mean what created that situation?
Oh, no, what were you teaching? What at that point when you were working full time as an instructor, what was your teaching at that point?
Yeah, right. What led into that, right? What was going on is it was really JKD classes. And I had just gone out to California in '84 to Jay's California Martial Arts Academy stuff out in Irvine. We stayed on the campus, and that's the first time I met Dan personally, Dan Anasano, and Leo Gahe Jr. was out there. That's when Daniel Dubé was out there, the Savat guy.
Oh, yeah. He's
and I went out there. Yeah, he was a great guy. And that's when I went out there and got immersed. And we're watching Sam do his kitchen stuff over here or something. Cleaning his kitchen or something back there.
Yeah, I don't know about him.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. It was Stan and I were together, and we were teaching that. I was an administrator at St. Lucie at the time. And, I got the martial art thing going in their recreation center over there right before the full-time thing happened. I was over there teaching, and that's when Jay and I connected. Somebody told him to come and look us up, and then that's when I ended up out in California, then came back here to St. Louis, and then that's when things just evolved. I got Jay set up to do all the stuff at St. Louis University instead of doing it out in California, because his sister Janice was kind of running the show and getting people signed up, and realized, well, more people come probably from the Midwest and the East Coast than from the West Coast. And I said, well, Jay, we have these conference rooms sitting here. I could get them really cheap for you in the summer at SLU. And that's when Jay shifted the CMAA, the week-long stuff to the St. Louis University campus. I helped him get all that set up. And then that's when we got really close. And then not long after that, it started to morph into, man, we need to have a school. So basically, we took over Bruce Albach's Kaju Kempo school. I mean, we started doing stuff there, and Jay just kind of sort of took over somehow. Bruce allowed it. I guess, I don't know why he did, but it happened. And that grew into a huge facility with 8 martial arts. And during that process, I left my job at SLU, took another job for a short time, doing audio and video production work. And then things I didn't like it, and I left there. And then Jay's like, well, come on, so he was teaching me how to do the construction part while we were actually virtually gutting this building. We did gut it, and created the school there, which was the biggest, fanciest school anybody had ever seen in St. Louis at the time. And then that turned into me teaching full time and running the school for Jay, because he had Gold's Gyms he was built like buying all over the place. I don't know what created that, but he was gone a lot during those years, doing that.
Yeah, that's the thing with fitness. Fitness definitely runs in fads. I mean, martial arts stuff runs in fads too, but it's not quite as dictated heavily as the fitness industry, because the fitness industry, I mean, their fads are really powerful. I mean, they're extremely powerful. But then let's talk about Tae Bo, for example. Tae Bo came in, and which was basically, fake kickboxing in the air, really. Right. And then everybody was doing it, and it made millions upon millions. And in fact, I heard about Billy Blanks, the guy who he had been doing it in California at a gym, and then they said, hey, we should market this. And he got not a good deal on his, like most people. He didn't get a good deal on the people who promoted the filming. I mean, they made a huge amount, but there were so many sold that he still made money. You know what I mean? I mean, he still made serious money, because I mean, that's how big Tae Bo was, and I don't think anything, I mean, people have tried Zumba, and people tried to do cardio kickboxing after Tae Bo, try to same thing but call it something different. And CrossFit now is huge, because they made games, because that now gives them a purpose. And I still see CrossFit fading. I think CrossFit's going to fade, in a little while. But the thing is, like, I think that you and I saw the JKD fad in the United States, and then we saw like the Muay Thai fad, which was connected to the JKD thing. And then I think we definitely saw the peak of the FMA. I mean, I think the Filipino martial arts stuff peaked because of its JKD connection somewhere in the 80s, possibly the very early 90s. But that was it, because there's still people who do Filipino martial arts in the United States. I mean, that's of the people in the world, it's a huge portion that do it in the United States. It's a big market, but it's not like it was. I mean, you probably had people coming in back in the days who would say, hey, do you guys do that stick stuff, or or whatever, because basically it was Dan Inosanto, and he was in movies with Steven Seagal and other people hitting people with sticks, he and Jeff Imada. And so that became a fad, and so from that time you had this fad, and I think that those of us who were on the cutting edge in the United States, we did all of those things. I mean, I know you did. You did them all. But now, where do you put yourself, Ken? Where do you put yourself? Is he frozen? I don't know. Something's happening.
Well, not here, I guess. But he joined and left the call a second time.
Oh, did he? That's weird.
Yeah.
I'm having a problem trying to connect Sergio right now. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about Sam. Yeah, he just left the call. I don't know what happened. So Sam, you have a more modern journey. I mean, in fact, I don't even know where you started. Where did you start? What did you start in?
I started in Kung Fu. I started in like a couple of friends in the neighborhood that my childhood neighborhood. I went to college, and then I came back and was hanging out with my high school friends who all did Kung Fu. And so it was just sort of a, hey, my friends are doing it, and I'll join along with them kind of thing. And also around that time, I got accepted to some study abroad programs in Vietnam, and I saw the movie, the Thai movie Ong Bak Muay Thai Warrior, which is kind of a cult classic.
Yeah, the first one.
A lot of folks got into Muay Thai. Yeah, the first one, of course. Yeah. Yep. So I was like, wow, that shit's cool, and I want to do that. So I was in Vietnam, and I was at a sports center where they offered all these classes, and one of them was Muay Thai. And it was just it was like kickboxing. They had bags, and they made us go through drills and stuff like that. It wasn't like Muay Thai or anything, but it was still, it was like before then I'd only done sort of like traditional martial arts, like forms and standing in stance and developing my chi and all that stuff. And so I was like, wow, this is really physical. You know, I was dripping in sweat at the end. My body hurt. I was sore. I was like, this is the real deal right here. You know, like every step in my journey, I was kind of like, I found it. I found the next big thing and the next cutting edge thing. So that was that one at that time. And so I rocked that for a while I was in Vietnam. And then when I came back, like I bounced back and forth between Vietnam and my hometown, or Southeast Asia rather, and my hometown, where I live now, which is Syracuse, New York. So the next time I came back, I found like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai school that was like a little local school there. So I started doing all that. And then I was like, MMA is the best thing ever, and it can be used for everything. And then that school took me back to Thailand where I trained some Muay Thai more, but that's where I met Christophe. And so that's where I started doing more like self-defense, self-protection kind of training, things that are specifically focused on street encounters instead of sport fighting, things like that.
Yeah.
So now that's the next big thing, right? That's the stop on my journey that I'm at right now.
Well,
and
I don't think it gets any. I don't think you can get any more intense than like warfare. You know what I'm saying? But
oh sure,
I don't think you can. I don't think it's going to go any further than having actual warfare. But yeah, so I mean that's the thing. When you get locked into sports stuff, you start thinking sports things are the answers. And I mean, I see so many people who think that sport training is somehow the real fighting, and it's very different from real fighting. And I mean, from going to the last camp that how different things really are. And those people, I mean, you can't. I know you tried to talk to some of the guys that that do sports stuff, and it's almost impossible, isn't it, to talk to them about like, well, you don't know. I mean, you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know, which is kind of weird. It sounds strange to say it like that, but you don't know what you don't know, And the thing is that they have no clue. And wow, what happened? Okay, we're having technical problems for some reason. Sergio, I'm trying to add you, but I can't. I don't know why. I don't know. Can you add somebody that you're in, Sam, or not? Can you pull down the screen and invite somebody or not?
Let me look for.
Okay, but anyway, yeah, it's at the top.
No, I don't have the option. I think you have to be like an administrator to do it. But there's a button, but it's faded out.
Oh, really? Because I can put it. It's just I can't send it for some reason. I can't send this invite. I don't know why. Earlier, it was giving me a problem with what do you call it? Sending something to Ken, but then I did. Maybe.
Yeah, I lost you for almost 5 minutes. I had to reconnect 3 times.
Yeah, we saw that. We saw it coming in and out and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what the deal is, though. There's a amount of people that I have the chat open, but I don't see anything happening in the chat. Anyway, this is this is live with no net. So people are watching. I mean, we're doing everything with no teleprompters, as they say, no rehearsal, no crew, and of course, this is from one continent on one side of the planet to a continent on the other side of the planet, and we definitely have problems. And you know, I'm not trying to cut Sergio. I'm not trying to cut Sergio out at all. But I'm just, it's a technical problem here that's not allowing me to add him. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on here. What's this? Anyway, what? I'm just trying to. What is this? I've signed in. Why is that? Anyway, the point being that we're all trying to continue our growth, going in. And I like to say that that my direction has always been going in more reality, dealing with reality. I mean, I was doing that before I was. I mean, I did that. Then I was a professional fighter, and I put it all kind of hold, and because I couldn't make money with the real thing, and so I couldn't. So that put me off. It put me off of advancing the real stuff. I spent a lot of time advancing the professional fighting, which is, there's a lot to that. Yeah, especially when you're fighting in multiple things. I was boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai and K1. They're all different. I mean, and shoot boxing, they're all different. I mean, you have to train differently for all of them, and there's different rules, of course. And there's so it changes everything. But the thing that so anyway, so what I was trying to get to with you, Ken, was where do you see yourself at now? I mean, what is your thrust? Where are you on the martial arts journey at this point?
Well, you kind of know this already. I mean, for the last more than 5 years, I'd say it's to the point now where it's 90 or 95% systemic.
Yeah, I mean, what is your exact thrust now? I mean, if you were to categorize what your training is specifically,
I mean, it's multifaceted, but the core principle is freedom of movement. It was interesting how bouncing that off of somebody like Jay that day after we did the talk here, and he wanted to kind of fool around with some stuff a little bit, and it was just for literally a couple of minutes, but he saw that my body is freed up a lot, and it's.
Yeah, we got a problem again here. We got a technical problem with Ken. Technical problem with Ken's. He just froze on us for a second. But I would say, okay, so let's go back to you, Sam. And so you're on I mean, obviously, you told me that you had at one point wanted to do sport fighting, but you kind of dropped that idea, right? I mean, you kind of dropped that thrust or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what you said basically is that it comes down to the money, and that was basically like, I mean, with anything I do in life, I try and think about it in terms of like, what return am I getting on my investment in? So if I put a certain amount of time and money and energy into a thing, like, where will I be with it? And with sport fighting, look at people who achieve the highest levels of sport fighting, like a UFC champion or a kickboxing champion or something like that, and look at the amount of damage they're doing to themselves and the amount of pain they're taking, all for a medal or all for a belt and a few bucks or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really, it's just a really brutal life. It's a really hard life. And what are you getting in return? Well, I was told before, well, you learn how to, you get a good workout and you get camaraderie with people and you learn self-defense as well. And, hard workouts are great and camaraderie is great and self-defense is great. But, my intention with this whole journey has always been like the principle I told myself when I first started training myself was, now I can protect myself. It's like an exercise class that acts as an insurance policy because it gives me skills against like violent encounters or whatever. And in each of the arts I've been stuck on up to this point, I've always thought like, well, I can protect myself with this. If something comes down to it, I can protect myself with this. So yeah, I mean,
well, that kind of
but just why I came up with the idea of being a professional sport fighter was because, like, I don't want to take all these shots to the head, like, and all this damage on my body, and then be drinking through a spoon at 50 or whatever, you know? Like,
you're going to be doing that in a week or two. Anyway, but
smart guy, Sam. Smart.
But just to put a kind of a, you know, because people have recently been asking, and I had some trolls recently on one of my Facebook groups, and you can say, obviously, Sam, because you were there. I mean, you thought these other guys were talking about self-defense, but when you went to the Combat Judo Alpha camp.
Oh, is this the guy that was all like, "Can I get some info?" And people were telling him, "Well, you got to come to." And
that's one of them. That's one of them. But I mean, you can say you thought whatever, fighting or self-protection was one thing, but then you went there. Well, that kind of blew out that idea, didn't it? I mean, it kind of completely changed your paradigm. And
well, actually, yeah. I mean, I guess the paradigm shift happened when I first trained with you in Southeast Asia. Like, that was where I was first aware of things. Like, and actually, another thing I feel like I want to say that sort of put me on this self-defense and self-protection track is, like, in the third world, it's a nasty place, basically. Like, I don't know the quote-unquote politically correct way to say that, but there's just a lot more. Like, when I was there, and I would see people just start beating the shit out of each other for no reason that I could see whatsoever. You know, things would happen, like, and people had sticks, and people were picking up, like, plastic stools and tables and chairs and rocks and just the stuff around them to you know what I mean? Like, when encounters would go down, and like, you know, it just made me realize that, like skulls break easily and bones break easily, and we're a lot more fragile than we think, you know? We're a lot more vulnerable when we think, stuff like that. Like, it's a dangerous world, and a lot of people who don't realize that don't feel like they have a need to learn how to protect themselves.
Yeah, well, and they get into denial. They do denial, and they come up with rationalizations like, "Oh, it's not going to happen to me. I can control it." You can't control it because violence. These people think there's a big difference between street fighting and violence. Street fights or bar fights or fights at hockey games in the crowd. Those things happen. Can they be de-escalated? Some of them can be. Some of them can be. But there's always a build-up there. I'm giving out information here for those freebie hunters. The thing about street fights and bar fights and everything, there's an escalation, and I won't say it's predictable because it's not, and it depends on which culture you're talking about. Since I've been in a lot of places in the world, the British, you know, pub fight is going to be different than the U.S. redneck cowboy bar fight, and how it escalates is totally different. And the same thing here in Southeast Asia, which Sam saw some of that, and I've seen it for 13 years. But the thing is, there's an escalation. With real violence, there's no escalation. It just happens, and you can't talk your way out of it. If someone's trying to rob you, if they're running up to hit you with a 2x4 or try to stab you or slash you, and you can watch lots of videos on that now, you can't talk your way out of that stuff. And you can't suddenly wish your way out of there and say, "I don't hang out with those types of people." That it doesn't matter because it's unilateral. This is game theory. Your decision doesn't matter. There's a two-decision thing going on. If the other guy decides to attack you, you're in it. And the only thing you can do is try to extradite yourself from that with the minimal amount of damage. And that is something, like you were saying, though, an insurance policy. And I get a lot of people who will spend, they spend loads of money on insuring their car and their house and contents of their house, and they never expect anything to go wrong. They don't expect there to be a fire. They don't expect there to be a flood unless you live in a place where it floods. They don't expect any of that, or a tornado. They don't expect any of that stuff. but they take out insurance because of that, maybe, because it will destroy their life if they don't have it. And that's the same thing I think that we can say with this, you know, those people who live in the first world and who don't go out, who stay at home, who are married, you know, have kids and go to work and come home. You can still get home invaded. You know, you can still be attacked. You can still be attacked when you're going to your car, coming from your car. Same thing with your wife, ATMs and all this stuff. And so, is that going to happen tomorrow? I don't know. You know, but the thing is, you're doing it like an insurance policy. So when it does happen, and I'm telling you right now, and I've said it, and I'm being big on it, is that, and I was, you know, I got to say this because I'm talking out of a reference of operational experience. I was a professional fighter for a long time. That stuff is not what I use in those situations. It's not correct. It's not the best thing, you know. You can try speaking Italian to a Spanish speaker. It's not going to work completely, you know. That's the whole thing. Same thing with the sports stuff. The BJJ, yeah. And that's, you know, thing. And it's like, you know, that's where we find ourselves. And that's one of the things, like at the camp, I think that was pretty apparent, you know, because one of the first things we did was we showed that guy was, you know, a Taekwondo. He has a Taekwondo school. And he saw immediately how Taekwondo is not going to work, you know, when I had him do,
yeah.
You know, yeah. I mean, I don't want to give out any, you know, details.
Well, we've kind of beat this horse to death, though, somewhat. You know, what I would say is this: I'm not disagreeing, but what we're talking about, and this is where most people are, we're still talking about the lowest level, the beginning level of understanding this whole subject of self-protection and self-defense. People's mentality keeps them there. This is the thing, I don't know how much you read of what I sent to Mark Albertina when you jumped in. That's a guy I grew up with. I've known him since the first grade. Remember that on Facebook?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, okay. And you saw what I said to him. You probably thought I was out of my mind. But I've been testing this for decades. What I'll say is this: to develop a higher level of awareness and just be able to keep yourself out of being in those situations in the first place, you still got to go through the level that we've been talking about, because it starts there. Everybody's there, really. I mean, that's where most people are, you know. And all I'm going to suggest, without going into a lecture about this, is there's a level that you can evolve to where your awareness is amped up so much so that, like Christophe mentioned a minute ago, and Sam was talking about this, you know, street fights and bar fights and being attacked and all that stuff fits into the whole practice of awareness. It's really not too difficult to see how probably 99% of the opportunities for that to happen to you can pretty easily be avoided by choices that you make.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people's awareness is not even high enough to know how to make that choice. They're walking with blinders on, not even realizing that they're setting themselves up because of where they put themselves. Boy, Sam, it looks like it's just you and I right now. This thing's.
No, I'm here.
You're there. Okay, cool. All right. So, you know, this is what I'm getting at, and this is going where we got cut off when I was talking earlier. This is one of the things that I dig about Systema. Not only do I like physically how it works, because one of the things they figured out is if you can teach people how to move and free up their bodies, and I've been testing this with various guys that have some grappling skills and Aikido people that know how to put locks on, they're onto something here. One of their goals with this particular branch that Mikhail came up with is the idea to free your body up, and it gets really hard for people to tie you in knots. It gets even really hard for them to hit you, because you really, through breathing and a lot of contact training, you learn how to move on impact. You don't do the natural reaction, which is to tense up and get really afraid and go, which is most people do. We all know this. They lock up when they get hit. We do so much contact training with breathing and softening our bodies up. At first I thought, wow, this is kind of cool, but I don't get it. And then after a while, it's like, holy crap. You start realizing you can take even hard blows to the head if you reprogram yourself, in a sense, to move with the blow and be relaxed and breathing. It's amazing the hits that you can take, okay? Then the next level of that is you're working your timing to higher and higher levels. By being more relaxed and breathing, you can move with much higher timing than you've ever had before from any other kind of training I've ever done. And it gets even tough for people to hit you. And we test this constantly we have guys with blunt metal knives. We'll get in these cluster fights, like I mentioned earlier, where, you know, sometimes there's 20 and 30 guys and everybody's trying to literally kill the guy next to them. You're not even working as partners. And it amps your awareness to a different level, and it amps your ability to understand that how you can sense what people are going to do, you know. And we even did a whole talk on something along these lines, but I'm telling you, there's levels of this that most people have never seen, they've definitely never experienced, and isn't taught in most arts. And this is where I'm at with what I'm doing now. And one of the ways I test this in my physical environment is I have to go on some pretty nasty evictions in some pretty rough parts of town. And I approach that even with a different mindset. I don't walk in there with body language that suggests that I'm afraid, or that suggests that I want to tear somebody's ass up. I notice that sometimes some of these other guys that come in that have to go in for legal reasons, they come in with a different vibe. We're back to the vibe thing, right? And I come in just loose and relaxed and friendly and act like I give a shit that these people are being thrown out of their house. And guess what? Nothing ever happens. I used to carry my Glock when I'd go in there. I don't do that anymore. And I really believe I don't have to. I've tested this so many ways, and I'm continuing to. I'm just saying that there's another level you can get to if you train for that level. But where everybody's at is what you guys are talking about. They're at this point where within the mass consciousness of the world, you know, people are afraid, and they're walking around afraid all the time. That fear sets you up to feel like you have to defend yourself, that everybody else is out to get you. And everybody's acting that out. It's like the Shakespeare thing where, you know, we're all actors in this world play. And I'm telling you that I know that there's a level that you can train yourself to beyond that. And you just don't get in those situations, and you're able to avoid them. Part of that has to do with training your ego too. You know, it's like, let's say you allow yourself to walk into a situation and some guy grabs your girlfriend's titties, or he grabs her ass or something in the bar. The average reaction to that is you're going to get in his face, and before you know it, we have everybody in the place brawling, or there's at least you and 2 or 3 other guys. And, you know, if your ego's under control and you learn how to relax and be more calm, you can extract yourself from these situations. You might, in the face of other people, you might feel like you're losing face, or you're being a pussy, or whatever shit people want to say about it. But the smartest guy is the guy who avoids that fight, because that's not in a ring, that's not in a cage, that's in a place out there where you don't know. This guy the guy behind the bar could be his best buddy, jump over and clock you in the back of the freaking head while you're engaged in a fight with this guy just because he grabbed your girlfriend's ass. I mean, that's a lower level of awareness, but I'm just giving some real basic examples of mentality dictates a lot of where you put yourself in situations. And in Christophe's case, with what he does and the kind of people he's training, it's necessary because these guys are warriors, and they're still in that huge world drama where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of conflict, there's, my God, there's so many mini wars going on the planet, it's ridiculous. But what I'm putting out there is that's because of consciousness, that's because of the level of mentality where people are stuck. And it certainly happens on the nation level, as well as on a local level, as well as on a personal level. And I think our job as we evolve is to try to help people see what I'm talking about, that there's a place to go beyond this. But, you know, it can only be done one person at a time. This isn't, you know, you just open a school and everybody comes in and all of a sudden the world is enlightened. This is the individual journey. To me, see, this is what makes a difference between actually being a martial artist, or just being a martial sport fighter, or just being a guy who's training in self-defense. That's the difference. To me, the artist is the person who's continually evolving. My metaphor for that has always been, I've always purposely changed the name of what I do. I've changed it for many, many years. It used to really piss off some of my students, and they say, why are you doing that? I said, because don't get fixated on anything. This goes back to basic JKD philosophy, man. You know, even being hung up on the name, as Bruce Lee himself said, is getting you stuck in a rut where you start to ritualize what you do, and you start to try to create patterns, and you're not free, and you're not evolving, and you're not flowing. And life is like that, you know. But you can gain more ability and more insight to be aware of everything that you're creating in your environment if you train in that direction. And so to answer your question, That's my core philosophy, and that's where I'm trying to go, and that's where I am going. And that's, as Forrest would say, that's all I got to say about that.
Well, you know, there's a lot to say about all of that. Number one is that, yeah, there is stuff, and I would say that the quest for everybody is, anybody who's serious, it's like Castaneda said, it's the quest for personal power. You're gaining personal power, and if you get up to a certain level, then you start, and this is going to sound weird to people, you start picking up on vibes on things, and you start knowing whole situations, not just people. You know, whole situations. But the thing is, you can't control those situations, and that's what I deal with that. I mean, I deal with it in places where, one, it's not your culture, and two, it doesn't matter what you think. People will maybe, and then what I mean, still people need something. Here's where I'm at. This is what I'm focusing on, is regardless of, and this is not trying to make light of anything you said, but this is like the guys that get involved in the yoga thing and they start trying to do their chakra and all this stuff. It doesn't matter your chakra enlightenment when people are trying to hack you with knives or machetes or whatever, which you can see happens in China. It happens, you know, all over the planet. It happens in England, or, you know, okay, at a distance, I can't help you. I mean, I can't help you with what we're talking about now is up close. So I can't help you from a sniper. That's another whole set of skills. I'm not doing that. But I still got to. What do you do when you are in these situations? And that's what I do. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's the last ditch, because it's not last ditch, because it's more, that makes it sound, dismisses the complexity of what goes into the structuring of the training. But you still got to have things like what happens if you just get out of your car and you run into two psychotics, psychopaths, who there's no reasoning, they do things, there's no logic to why they do things. And that is the problem that I see with a lot of people. Suddenly they could become analysts of situations. Why is this person trying to attack me? Why are they doing that? You can even look at videos where people are screaming this as the guy is someone's trying to hit them or hitting them or stealing something from them, trying to shoot at them, whatever. People are trying to analyze. You got to be in the moment. Let's get zen here for a second. You got to be in the moment. And then in that moment means you're not, it doesn't matter, because what you're saying when you start asking questions, let's get analytical, what you're saying is you don't believe that you should be attacked, that there's something going on that you don't deserve to be attacked. It has nothing to do, that's ego. I mean, that's egocentric, that's narcissistic. I don't deserve to be attacked. It doesn't matter what you think. I mean, that's emptying, you know, that's emptying the mind right there. Emptying the mind, and you have to react like an echo. I mean, all the Bruce's words come out here. And a lot of people probably don't know what he was talking about, but this is what, respond like an echo. This is exactly what, when it's under pressure, not when you're in the gym by yourself. It doesn't matter, respond like an echo. Respond like an echo to what? There's nothing to respond to, you know? So the thing is that you can try, you can cultivate yourself at a higher level. That takes years and years and years, and people need something to be able to do immediately. And they also need things for the worst case scenarios, and that's what I train. I mean, and that's where I'm at.
That's what I just said. That's where you're at, because that's where most people are. And when you're right, you just said something that was a good thing to say. You know, that's where I began, and that was my whole journey for the first 25, 30, 35 years of my training was just where you're talking about. And that's where most people are. And the only way you can help the vast majority of people is to do exactly what you're talking about. And I agree with that. I'm just trying to get it out there. When you asked, what am I doing? And That's why I've been doing it for almost 50 years now, because after 35 years of that, I've begun to realize that one of the things I've gained in all this different training is that my awareness is higher. My awareness is way higher, and I sense things that, if you want to get in the quantum world, this stuff has already happened. Time is simultaneous in the quantum world. I mean, now this is a mind blow, right? The past, the present, and the future in the quantum world, that's not a linear progression. It's all right now. They coexist simultaneously. This is a weird concept that people can't wrap their brains around, you know? Yeah. And this is what the quantum boys work on. And that goes down to your day-to-day reality and your thoughts and your beliefs, and how that dictates the situations that you put yourself into, right? And you've chosen the world that you're in. You've chosen to be in a violent part of the world, and this is something where you're able to help other people, though. See, this is why it's important that you're doing that, because you're working with the masses most people are dealing with that level of violence, and that violence comes from within themselves and goes out, and it comes from the other people that receive that wave, if you want to call it, and they bring it right back to them. People are choosing to act that out. More likely than anything, it's unconscious. You know, everybody just believes that's how the world is, and that is very true. It is and it isn't at the same time. It is because people are agreeing to play in that world because they don't understand there's an alternative. I didn't understand there's an alternative, and you know. But I am saying that your awareness and your abilities to sense things can get higher and higher and higher, and I'm experiencing the beginning levels of that strongly, realizing that I don't get in those kinds of situations. I feel the vibe coming down the street and avoid things. I know it sounds crazy, but that's where I'm at. I just felt it important to say that out there. So I want to give people an impetus and an understanding that there's levels to train to if they stay in this for a really long time that can give you even more and take you even further. But you've got to start where most people are, and unfortunately where most people stay, and that's in the level of hardcore physical self-defense. So it's important.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. I'm not disagreeing at all. And I mean, you and I, we can start talking, but we'll leave people behind because we can start talking about like the tachyons. They can go forward in time and backward in time, and this stuff. And it's amazing because all of these things and people, if you meet people who are elite, and a lot of people want to use that word too broadly, but I'm saying elite and really meaning elite, and who've done stuff for a really long time. There's things that we know that we can only talk to each other about because it doesn't make sense to other people, and it sounds sort of hocus pocus, and it also sounds like certain things from a certain warrior. I mean, you know, Apache warriors had this stuff too. I mean, they're talking about the same stuff you're talking about. I mean, they're not the only ones. Vikings even had it, you know. I mean, Vikings are probably the best example of hardcore physical brutality that you can think of. I mean, because they came at you. I mean, you know, you weren't talking your way out of anything, and their vibe was to destroy you. But the ones who had done it for a real long period of time, they started getting, I don't know what, you know, we can use this word because other people, because it works, people understand it's spiritual, you know, but it's really.
How about sixth sense, like the idea of the samurai at that level too, the sixth sense, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
More people probably relate to that because they've heard it in movies, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like there is that, but I think too much was made of that back in the 70s, you know? I mean, I think that people, they didn't deal with the actual, like you just said, they have to deal with the physical. They have to deal with the physical, and I think they weren't. They were bypassing the physical, and they were just trying to go on to the higher levels. But you don't get to those higher levels without going through. It's the same thing with climbing the mountain. You've got to make your handholds down below. You don't suddenly get teleported or dropped off from a helicopter halfway up. And I got to tell you, like on the vibe stuff that we're talking about, I mean, you and I both use vibe in the same way. And some of the other guys that I trained, Sean Stiles, for example, some others, they used this, we all use the same word, vibe. And I know exactly what you mean. A lot of people probably don't know what we mean, but that would take it'd take a long time to minutely explain what that really means. But this started with Mike. Mike was the one who was up front with me on that and started saying stuff and started saying, like, you know, we get into this part, it's going to be really trippy, you know, 70s talk, right? You know, and you know, it gets those cats, it's trippy, you know, and he's the one who introduced me to it, and I had questions with him even during the early part of my training, as in from that time to now. That's very early in my training. Even at that point, you know, I was making advances and I was starting to get vibes and stuff, and he answered some questions to me that have held true, you know, and the thing is that, yeah, if you meet someone who's a veteran warrior or a veteran of many battles, or however you want to put it, there's something to learn from that person. You know, there's something to learn, because if you don't see the reality that how did they make it to this level? I mean, you know, I got challenged many times on other people. I say, like, how do you think I made it this far? That I haven't dealt with people like you before? I mean, you know, and that's something like when you're talking about at the levels, they don't consider that, do they? Do they, Ken? I mean, they don't consider.
No, like you said, most people are lost in outer space with that. They don't get it. But you said something important. See, and I say this too. You got to take the journey, man. This is my biggest criticism of. I had a fair number of years in Aikido, and it's like, man, you know what? How come they can't do what the old man, Sensei, did? You know why? Because they didn't pay their dues. They didn't go through all the ass kickings and all the different arcs that he went through to evolve to the level he was at. See, they want to, like you said earlier, they want to start where he was. Like you mentioned, chakras and yoga people, and thinking that, you know, they spend a few years doing that and they're in control of everything. It's like, no. You've got to work through a process that takes decades, and you have to go through your hard knocks to understand it, to even get there. That's like I said, that's Aikido is a perfect example, because most of the people in Aikido, their thing is so limited. It's become so ritualized and so structured that combatively, if it gets out of that structure, they're screwed. I mean, I've got guys in my class now that have spent years in Aikido, and they see it, you know. This is also why there's a huge group of high-ranking Aikido guys starting like 12 years ago or more ago that started traveling to Toronto to train with Vladimir to kind of to get that back and do it realistically, you know, because it's just like you said, man, those guys don't want to do what Morihei Ueshiba did, right? And go through all the training and go through the evolution that you have to even get to that level. So here we are. We're still telling people they got to pay their dues, or they won't even understand what the hell we're talking about. But I just wanted to get it out there, because I know there's probably people listening to us who don't even realize that exists, you know, and that it is real. But it's a process. It's like, you don't just go to the gym for 5 years and walk out with that level of ability, you know. And I still consider myself an infant at that level. Yet I do see how it works, and I apply it frequently. So there you go.
Yeah, well, you know, I once again, of course, I agree with you, as our listeners should know by this point, that we agree, because we went through the same thing at one point. So that the type of person that makes it, that was one of the things, you know, long ago. I don't think I ever got that across. I really was going to try to talk to Stan about that, and also to Norm. Did you kick him in the nuts, by the way? And
he's not around.
No, and
yeah, he's working his butt off. I haven't seen him in about a month.
Okay, but what I was going to say was that I wanted to say that since they made it through there, I mean, they made it through, then we all have certain characteristics that are similar. You know, it's the same thing with Spec Ops. Anybody who makes it through Spec Ops, it doesn't matter if you're British and you did SAS or SBS, or, you know, if you're French and you make Dean Ops team, or, you know, you're a New Zealand SAS, or you're Green Beret in U.S. Those guys, everybody has the same characteristics. You know what I'm saying? There are core parts that are similar. You know, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, you and I are obviously similar, and you're going a little bit in a different direction than me, and I'm going a little bit different direction than you. And I know other people, you know, at our level or whatever, and they're doing it just, you know, kind of, you know, leaning more, maybe my direction or maybe leaning your direction. But what I'm saying is that every one of us realizes that you got to pay your dues. You know, you don't get this without getting hurt. Basically, you know, you're not gonna get here without. I remember Mike saying to me, one of the things he said, you know, I meet these guys and they want to tell me that they're you know, they're this or that, or they're a master, you know, they're a master of this or that. And he said, I look at them and they have no scars anywhere on their body, not on their hands, you know, nothing on their face, nothing. And he said, that's impossible. And you'll hear the same thing from guys that have been to war or on missions, or, you know, I don't want to go down this road too much, but, you know, that have done operations, that's the term nowadays, operations. They've done a lot of operations and they don't have some sort of scars and stuff. They didn't do it. You know what I mean? And that's how you, unfortunately, paying your dues is something most people do not want to do. You know, they just don't want to do it. And the only way to get to where you're talking is to pay your dues. I mean, you got to make, and really I think you got to make the big exertion initially, right? I mean, you got to put out a huge amount of effort initially, so that you can get up to a place where you can actually do something. Let me mute his mic. Okay, and so that's something I think that you know, that we're I would say one of the things here, because I was trying to talk about 3 big reasons to give up what you were doing before, and you hit it right there. I mean, one of them that you just said was about the Aikido. You know, it's not, I mean, do you want to say it's not hard enough? And hard enough isn't physically contact.
No, I wouldn't say that. I'll tell you what, Aikido guys, the way they train, they hurt themselves way more generally than we do, and we do a lot more vast, combatively real things, because there's no protocol, there's no ritualized approach to how we fight. I mean, we literally run into the middle of the room in a cluster sometimes, and people start pulling out knives. I mean, that's about as crazy, over the top real as you can get in that regard. But what I'm getting at is that it's the limitations of how, in other words, they would say, well, you could put the strike here. This could be a strike, but they never train the strikes.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying by there's no physical. It's not physicality. You know, they're not.
It's just limited.
You know,
yeah.
In any real fight or any real thing, there's this. This is I mean, these are 2 bodies, and this is going to be happening. There's no way around that, especially in close proximity in a closed room with a bunch of people around you. This is going to happen. And if you can't handle this, and you haven't trained this, you can't handle it. You know, I mean, you know, and that's the thing I got with lots of people. Like, you know, Aikido is one of the people we beat down for years. Some other ones, guys trying to stand out and kick each other like Taekwondo or something. That's another group. And then the ritualized people, like we know, like the Silat guys, who never practice this. They do it in slow motion with people who are helping them, who are compliant, and they don't give them combat speed. They don't give them a struggle, and you know, they make the other guy look good. And that's what I'm saying. That has to be there for you to get to the next level. That's what I'm saying. If you want to get to the next level, you can't be using a padded stick or something. If you're talking about hitting sort of sticks, I mean, you got to have a struggle. You know, that's it. I mean, and that struggle. Oh, here we go, Ken. That physical struggle leads to a mental struggle with yourself. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is you start to try to figure out, mentally you're struggling with yourself. How can I make the physical struggle easier? I mean, that's what happened with me. I mean, you know,
yeah, you start looking for other solutions, and here we go. Now we're back to the difference between how we approach all this and what these guys, they get in this one style and they stay there for 35 years, and then now this was the story of California Martial Arts when I was running that place, and I taught there 30 hours a week and I ran it. Here's this typical scene. Some guy walks in the door who's a known contact fighter at the time in the 80s, right? This has happened several times, and is so embarrassed because he just got the ever-living shit kicked out of him in a bar in the last week because all of his stuff failed. I said, well, yeah, it makes sense, right? You square off in a nice big open room all the time, and there's rules and there's judges and there's people that are going to stop it if it gets too crazy, and you're just working punches and kicks. You're not working well. In the middle of falling to the ground, the guy pulls his knife out. Now he's working on your carotid artery while you're falling to the ground, and his buddy, now his buddy's on top of you. Oh wait, now two more buddies are kicking you in the fucking head while you're trying to get away from the. That's the way you want to train for realistic stuff. So, you know, that's why we still train that way. We've just learned ways to not get creamed, and this is one of the things that Vladimir and Mikhailov figured out. There's ways to train that where there is a lot of training where it's softer. If you amp it up all the time, guess what? You fall right back into your old patterns of tightening up and getting afraid and not breathing. So you got to have structures for training that in a way that's completely spontaneous. Nobody knows what you're going to do. But then you amp it up. In fact, the typical progression in a class is it starts off, you're loosening up, you're softening your body, you're getting rid of your tension. Then the drills just begin to build in intensity. Before you know it, toward the end of class, you're in a total free flow fight. Nobody's wearing any protective equipment at all. When a guy punches you, he's punching you. He's not, and he's kicking you. And he's got the knife may not have an edge on it, but it still hurts like a son of a bitch, and it'll still gash the shit out of you. And your body not knowing your mind not knowing the difference between reality and simulation, right? It still feels it. It feels the pain of the blade, you know. So it's still very realistic, and yet it's done in a way that you're not getting so screwed up you can't go to work tomorrow, which is what we didn't have in the old days of training. You know, there was no middle ground on how to train this stuff and still make it flowing and spontaneous without extreme injury. And I would say that's one of the biggest things that's evolved in the difference in how we train now. Most people, I mean, we still get hurt, but nobody's getting dislocated shoulders and busted ribs on all the shit that I went through over the years. You know, we have a smarter way to train and still keep it real. So, but you're right. You've got to go through a progression, man. You don't just have it. And too many guys, if they want to say it's a martial approach, I say it's a limited martial approach when I look at a lot of other arts because they're leaving out all this other reality, you know, and that's dangerous. If your mentality is about fighting and defending yourself, that's too limiting, and you'll find out the hard way if you try it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to the sequential structuring of learning. Is always apparent in anybody who's really good at anything. I mean, if you go to somebody who's great at teaching you languages, they'll do that. You'll go through gradations of how you learn the language. You don't do these big jump skips, you know. And that's the same thing we're talking about here. It's also the same thing you would do physically too. Like one of my friends is Louis Simmons, the #1 powerlifting coach in the world with the #1 powerlifting gym in the world. And the reason why they're able to do, because he's always evolving things, #1. He does things that people don't think would work, but do work. But he's always sequentially building things, you know, little bit, working on the weak areas, you know, and not working on the prime muscles, but working on the stabilizer muscles for one thing, making them stronger.
Yeah, see that fine tuning, those nuances.
Yeah, and that's what you and I are talking. Well, that's what you're talking about right now, and I'm talking about that too. But I'm talking about that more I guess, you know, the thing is, like, if you don't know the faults in something else, then you won't move yourself towards trying to get better. You know what I'm saying? So that's why when people ask me about, okay, what do you think about this or what do you think about that, I have analyzed all this stuff. I mean, this is what I do, you know. Done it for a long time. And so I know the pluses or minuses. There are a few good things that people train, and I will say that if they come to me with it, but most people don't train that way, you know. And I'll say, well, there's a flaw in this, you know. And it's like you said, like you and I both have said, the reason is mainly the limiting mindset. Like, I have to use this. We are, you know, let's just pick on Wing Chun. We've got to trap, you know, and I can make trapping fit everywhere. No, you cannot, because there are better things to do than trapping. And you're vulnerable to low kicks, to hard hooks, and to takedowns. And you can't stop them. Not against anybody who's any good. You can't. You can't. You think anybody can, whatever, Bill G, Tyson hook? They can't. It's not. It's wrong. And it's the same thing. And my analogy to that is, I don't care how you paint the go-kart. I don't care who you have driving the go-kart. The go-kart is wrong to try to be using in the Arctic. It just won't get you anywhere. It won't get you anywhere because it's a design flaw. And that's what we're talking about. I mean, you know, this stuff is heavy, as they used to say in the 70s. This stuff is heavy. And I know this stuff inside and out, you know. And the people who try to make comments don't know anything on these levels. And you have got to, you cannot build something if you don't have the right design for it. You know, you can't use a snowmobile in the damn desert either. You know, you've got to have the right vehicle, the right vehicle. Yeah. And what we're talking about, what you and I are talking about, is we're trying to make the biggest, best all-terrain vehicle. Now, there are specific vehicles for, like, the ring fighting, just like there's specific vehicles for Formula One racing. Is a Formula One racing car going to be able to do jack shit in off-road? No. You know what I mean? So when you change it, when you change the environment, you change what happens. So we're trying to create the vehicle that works the best in all environments, which is exactly what you need in real life, because you're going to move in and out of different environments. You're not going to be in an environment that's constantly in the ring or in the cage. Well lit, temperature, you know?
No, and we're back to that. The word attachment keeps flashing in front of my eyes, right? People get so attached. Well, this has such and such a lineage from blah, blah, blah. Now, this is one of the things that made Jay and I connect right away. We don't care. I always pay credit to who, I even have a chart of lineage of all my instructors and their instructors, and I have all this thing on the sheet of, I truly respect and pay homage to my instructors, but at the same time, you know, for me to grow, I've had to go, have had to have various instructors and become one myself, right? So that's what we're talking about. If you're too attached to stuff, like if you keep trying to trap and you realize, well, shit, you know, I had this experience when I went from high school wrestling to karate. It's like, wow, I'm a mediocre wrestler. I'm in shape, but I'm a mediocre wrestler. And I can take down a lot of guys trying to punch and kick me because they don't ever work against that. That's when the light bulb went off in my head when I was a teenager. Like, I want to survive out there, man. I'm not, you know, I don't care where it comes from. And I've always kept that mentality. And I got to slip one thing in here because I meant to do this earlier. Most Aikido is what we describe. I have a really good buddy here in St. Louis who's rather unique, a guy named Elliot Freeman, who has a place called Three Rivers Aikido. This is where I taught my classes when I got back into it after I laid off for a few years. Elliot's smart because he went outside of Aikido. You know, he was traveling around doing like a kickboxing thing for years. And one of his reasons that he used to have me come into his place was to work with his brown and black belts and initially do like some Filipino knife stuff. Initially, I was doing like the older stuff like I got from Dan and everything. And just to give these guys a broader feel, you know, get down on the ground. What happens when you go to the ground? I mean, Elliot's one of the most open-minded Aikido guys I've ever seen. And he says, I want to make our art stronger by making it more adaptable to these kinds of things. And what a guy comes in boxing, you know, I just had to give him credit there because he goes out of that box. You know, even though they're Aikido guys, his guys are, and you can see his higher level guys are more adaptable in there. But that's not typical Aikido either. You know, he just happens to be a really open-minded guy with a graduate degree in art, which has affected his mentality too. So I just had to slip that in there. Not every Aikido guy on the planet is that narrow.
Well, no, but we got, like every science, you aggregate, you do an aggregate, just like actuaries do about predicting when people are going to die, or, you know, you do this activity, this is what's going to happen to you. And always bears true. But that's exactly, that guy is, I didn't know that guy, but that's how I found you when I started looking for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For you and Ken, when I tried to find you, when I tried to reconnect with the source, the sources of everything. Yeah, I found you there, and I saw a little bit of something you were doing, and I was kind of amazed, really. Well, I thought that you were just using, I thought that was just a seminar or clinic that you had, and that those weren't Aikido guys. I thought, you know what I'm saying? I thought those were just
the one you saw was a mix. The
Okay.
one you saw was a mix of guys. Actually, there were several Taekwondo guys, Hapkido guys in there, and Aikido people that wanted to see some of the old drills from that I had from the old the old Dan days, which was stuff even at that point I was already had moved away from that for my personal, but that was stuff that they were asking for, and that's what I gave them. I showed them that stuff, but
well,
so you were seeing a mix. It was a mixed workshop with people from different arts.
It was good stuff. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I mean, you know what I mean? I recognized, you know what I'm saying? I recognize, yeah.
And everybody's doing that comes from the
yeah, and that's, I think I even said that, I said,
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, we don't have to stay on that so much, but the factor is like, the thing is that, attachment. I never, see, that was my thing when I was, before I found Mike or whatever. I went through whole lots of different martial arts, and because they never had exactly what I was looking for, number one,
right.
but they weren't willing, like you're saying, they weren't willing to let go. I couldn't find any, because I didn't have, when I was first started, I didn't have boxing gyms, or any of that stuff around me. If I would have found that, I would have found people who were a lot more open because they were, actually hitting each other. But when you get people punching in the air and stuff, they get really abstracted, and they start running into theories. They get too theoretical, and they won't grow. When they get theoretical, they start chasing these theories down, thinking, wow, my theory is going to work, and then they get abstracted when they never try it. I mean, they start doing things like, oh, your hand's in the wrong position. I've always been result oriented. Did you stop? Did you block it? Did you stop the damn punch or the kick? Well, then that must have been the right thing to do. Did you move out of the way of the punch or the kick? Well, that must have been the right thing to do. It wasn't like, well, you should do it this way or that way. It's like, were you successful? That's all I ever cared about. And the thing is, like what you're talking about, these people are not willing to put that forward. That's not what, to me and to you, it's being about coming out successful in any sort of situation. So we don't care where it comes from. I don't care. I mean, when I made a break and started looking at Occidental fighting, because I'm like, how in the hell, the Occidental world rules the world. I mean, that's just a fact. Everything important has come. The modern life is it's music from the West, and by the West I mean Europe initially, and basically you can trace it. There's a book written about this. You can trace it down to Italy, basically one of the major areas: architecture, engineering, legal, philosophy, military, all of it, medicine, everything that's important that people use now was developed in the West. Nobody's using crap that somebody was doing in Papua New Guinea. That's not influencing the world right now. And the thing is, why? What was the underlying reason why the West was superior? I mean, you can get into the book that was written about the guns, germs, and steel, whatever, but the factor is because you're pragmatic, because the West has always been pragmatic, and the fighting styles of the West were always pragmatic. They didn't get off into too much theory. They did application, and they said, the true and perfect methods will win out, the false ones will die because the people using them will die. And that's where you and I both have done this. I've said the same thing. We want to use what's successful. We want to, and from being successful, then you start being able to move yourself up, and you're not overwhelmed like you were talking about before. You're not overwhelmed. Certain situations, you've been in them, so when they happen, they're kind of familiar. And so it's not happening. It's not shocking your nervous system and your RAM, reticular activating mechanism, and your amygdala. You're not emotionally overwhelmed. So you're able to start. You can start thinking, which you can't do when it's the other situation, and that's what's going to happen. If you get it. It takes I mean, if bombs going off around you, people getting killed, and being calm and being able to think, that takes a certain type of person. It takes someone also who's been there. Now, a normal person can't do that, and they're not going to do it the first time. So there's nothing wrong with realizing that people are going to be in extreme fright when they have a bad situation. But what I'm saying is, we're not talking about that, people getting blown up and stuff next to us. We're talking about, I've seen what's going to happen. You know where it leads. Like, we're talking about somebody grabs someone and then it escalates. They're pushing, shoving, and then there's somebody's going to try to hit somebody, right? We know that. Yeah, we know that. I mean, we know. I mean, like, we can predict, especially for the United States, how it's going to go. Because another thing, that people don't realize, and I've said repeatedly, trying to drive it into people, it's free here. United States is a gun or a fist culture. If there's no gun involved, then they assume it's a fist. It's going to be fist fighting, and if they start out fist fighting, sometimes somebody brings a gun into it, but that's basically gang stuff. So it's going to happen. But if suddenly people are like, get a gun, because they don't think about others. They don't think about other aspects, which are knives and sticks and stuff like that, which is more common in the rest of the world. Oh, and they also don't think. People gang up on people in the U.S. and Canada. I'm not saying that they don't, but it's not at the level that it is like in Southeast Asia. You are not. And that's one of the mistakes that people make, that Westerners make when they come here. If they're going to get in a fight, they don't realize that these little bastards are all going to work together, and they will sneak attack you from behind, and they'll hit you with bottles and chairs, because they don't give a shit about honor. They don't care. They don't have that. That's not in them. And that's why I flat told them, I said, if you try something with me, I'm killing every single one of you. I am not putting up with your shit. I mean, that's me. I mean, that's me. I'm not saying everyone has to do it, but I know what their strategy is and how they work. And I'm not going to put up with it, So, I mean, that's something, Mike, I'm not having it. I think that's how Mike said it. I'm not having it. Yeah, but I mean, but it's kind of good because we're kind of like going in and out, back and forth. We're kind of weaving our way through this matrix, I mean, like something like a quantum field, right? I mean, because it's not really one thing or the other thing. It's all at the same time, right? Because I mean, we're saying that you have this extreme violence or you have this extreme contact, but you can also have this awareness of that you can try to be something else. You can try to be somewhere else with it, right? I mean, did that make sense? I mean,
I get it. Sure. So, and I think it's important. We got to let people know how vast this whole subject is. Hey, I'm over time here on. Okay. I'm getting texts like crazy. I'm gonna have to get going here, but. All
right. Okay. So I'll conclude with Sam, but I would just say that some of the takeaway points here is that you got to pay your dues. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't pay your dues. Number two is that you got to realize that there is another level to all of this. And I mean, what would you add to that, to those 2 points?
I would say that's true. You have to start really. I think you can make a mistake when you start at the martial sport level and stay there. When it comes to just evolving as a human being, you really are going to learn more dealing with a more combat real martial approach to your learning, because it's reality, because what we're really talking about here is all this stuff is about fear. It's about fear dying at the hands of another human being or a group of human beings, and that's like primal gut level fear, and really there's just fear. You can say there's a fear of this and a fear of that and a fear of this, but it's really all just fear. So to me, one of the greatest things about training and using the fear of injury and death in combat is that it links to all other levels of fear that a human being experiences. And as you learn how to control yourself for the best possible outcome from any fear situation that you're in, I have never seen a better way to train for that. And it connects to everything, just fear of losing a job, fear of losing your wife or whatever. I mean, it's all connected to fear, period. And we're in a practice of learning how to deal with self-control in fearful situations.
Yeah.
To me, that's the core philosophy of what we're putting out here, really.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. It's two pillars of Zen, and that's why there's two dragons or lions that put outside of certain places, and that's fear and desire. That's what drives people, fear or desire. You know, like you're motivated by fear or desire, and so the Zen way is to try to give up attachment to both. You know, I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
but
no, I got stuck in that trap for years and realized it was wrong. You can't have no desire. If you have no desire, you literally just die.
yeah,
You have to have a desire for survival, and this is that's how extreme a lot of those old Hindu ascetics get, is they are virtually just trying to commit suicide, really. But anyway, that's another topic. But I'm with you there. Yeah, you better have some desire, or you're going to do nothing. You're going to wither away.
Yeah, and like you said though, I mean, the thing is, fear is. I mean, we should do a whole thing on fear. You know what?
Yeah.
I think we should. And I think so. I think, you know, I could say a lot, but let's not. You know, I mean, it's a good opening.
No, I'm with you there. I'm making a note about it.
Yeah, make a note, because I think that's a whole cool. You know what I mean by cool. And
come on, that's the base motivation for all this.
Well, that's life, like you said.
Why would anybody do all this training and go through the injury and the this and that and the other if it wasn't because they have fear? You know? Come on,
and fear change. Oh, see, now, wait, man, I have to shut up, because I'm going to get down to it, you know. But
no, I know.
But anyway, so I would say, you know, the three motivations, or the three reasons why we moved on from what we originally were doing, was that one, that they weren't paying their dues of what they were doing, and we didn't feel like we were paying our dues what we started in, and two, that they weren't willing to give up their vested interests in whatever they were doing, you know, be that trapping or be that kicking or whatever. And then beyond that, they didn't connect with the fear. They tried to ignore the fear, you know, like dismiss the fear, and never train with the fear. That's the thing that's what I get with a lot of people that I train, is they've never been trained when they're scared, and they have to be. You know, they have to be trained when they're scared.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
right,
okay, Ken, you go, I'm gonna. Okay, so Ken and I will be back. I don't know, soon, a week or two, and but Sam's hanging out for a bit, and I'm gonna, because I didn't get to finish up with Sam. We lost him. But anyway, okay, Ken. See ya.
You guys, see you, Sam.
Okay, coolness. All right. All right, Sam. So I don't know what's up with those glasses, man. I don't know what's up with those glasses. But just to get back to you on this, because we kind of you dropped out there at one point. To get back to there, then I mean, your motivation to move to different martial arts stuff, and I hate using that term, you know that. It was basically because you didn't feel like it was real, right? That was the reason, that you didn't feel like it was going to be benefiting you enough, basically?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it was like Cesar Chavez who said, like, the educated mind cannot be uneducated again. And once my awareness was brought to a certain level of reality based on, like, just my experiences in life that I had, basically, like, part of it was training for reality situations. Another part of it actually was getting, like, attacked in the street in a violent encounter, basically, where you know, I wasn't aware of my surroundings, and because of that, I got sucker punched from behind, in the head, and it rocked me, and my assailant ran away before I could react. And you know, it was all so fast, and it all happened in a split second, where you know, it was really more real than anything I'd ever done. You know, I was just, you know, the physical reaction I had, the mental and the emotional like reaction I had, all that stuff of like, oh shit, this is not like, now we're touching gloves and now we're throwing punches at each other and bobbing and weaving around, you know, or now we slap our hands and bump our fists and now we're grabbing at each other's gis and we're kind of holding back a little bit just so we don't injure our partners and we both get a good workout. Like, that doesn't, like, someone who wants to fucking hit you, excuse me, someone who wants to hit you is not going to hold back, and someone who wants to really kill you is not going to hold back. And you know, in a way, I'm glad that I had the experiences that I did and have my health and my sanity intact to the point that it is, because now I can move forward from there.
Yeah. Well,
like now
it kind of, and it also, it primed you for some of the things I said, right? You know, I mean, you were primed, you were ready to hear what I had to say. And then as far as it's the mindset, because I mean, this is basically, not basically, that's wrong, but this is about, like I've said, I can't make a physical change in you if I can't make a mindset change in you. And you know, because you did several different types of training with me, and especially the last time, that's quite apparent. That's quite apparent, you know, and you can't drift. And so many people are drifting and not focused on the idea that they're going to be attacked at any time. And that's what you got caught unaware, as they say, or they got the drop on you, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, you know. The thing is, though, but you weren't, no one had ever really talked about that, had they, in sport fighting? Nobody really talked about that, did they? They didn't talk about that. That's what's going to happen. They didn't prepare you. That's what I'm getting to. They didn't prepare you for that. And so you're left with a big gap, aren't you? I mean, that's the problem. Sport training leaves you at a big gap when it comes to reality. And that's something you just said too, which is, you know, I don't really want to explain this completely, but there is a big difference between that and real. And that's the thing when you see these people when they're doing stuff like with fake knife fighting with each other. I'm talking about guys training in FMA and stuff. They're doing this like they're sparring, knife sparring, right? Knife sparring. That shit is never going to happen in reality, never. And what they're doing is a disservice to them. And the same thing when you're doing, like you were talking about, you're doing sparring. That is not what real fighting is like. It is not sparring.
Sure, and I guess the danger there too is people do these things for self-defense, right? Like, I'm going to train martial arts of any kind. I'm not trying to pick on any particular one, but people are just like, I'm going to train this, I'm going to train that so I can protect myself. But 90-something% of what is out there doesn't really mimic the reality of the intensity of somebody wanting to kill you or seriously injure you. Like, there are ways to mimic that intensity in training without personal injury to yourself. And that's all I want to say about that, because I don't want to go into secrets or whatever. But there are ways to do it. And it's, you know, it's not this big, it's not as complicated as people think. And 90-something% of what people are doing gives them false confidence. That's what I'm trying to get at, is like they think, oh, now I'm a beast, or I'm a ninja, or I'm a strong, powerful person, and so I can handle myself. And so, you know, then they get messed up. Like, you know, I mean, I guess so. I'm speaking from a personal perspective in the sense where I trained all my sport fighting stuff, and I trained all my MMA stuff, and my Muay Thai and my Jiu-Jitsu and this and that, and I put in time and money and effort, and I bled and I sweat, and I got scars on my hands and stuff, all that stuff. But like, it didn't protect me when it came down to the wire, when I really needed it the most. Because that's the other thing, is everybody sort of knew me as like the guy who trains, And so they thought, well, if anybody gets in a street fight, he's fucked. You know, Sam can fuck him up. He can handle him. And then when it happened, you know, fine, maybe I would have beat him in a fair fight, you know, where we were like both seeing each other and we both charged at each other and we both attacked each other at the same time. Maybe that would have happened, but the guy snuck up behind me, clocked me, and ran. So he won, quote unquote, won that encounter, but he got the better of that situation, not by any of his attributes or his skills or any of that, but just by using his mind and his thinking. Or maybe he wasn't even doing that, but the point being, he wasn't using anything physical. You know, he wasn't using any idea of a fair fight, because there's no such thing as a fair street fight. There's no such thing as a violent encounter, you know?
Yeah, and exactly. And so, I mean, man, you know, it's like all of this is points that could be said, because when we covered strategy and tactics, that's something, because that's where you're going to. That's what you're talking. You know, that's what you're talking about. Is that people don't know that, because they're not trained by people who know strategy and tactics. They're trained by people who know techniques, right? And that, I mean, hopefully, I'm saying that, you know, everyone's listening, but I'm saying this as you going through the camp, that you can look back now and see, man, I'm right about the strategy tactics stuff. You know, I mean, and people don't know it, because the instructors don't know it. How can they teach you something they don't know, you know? And as you know about the big example I use all the time, it's technique. You know, these guys are technique instructors. They don't know how to teach you tactics and strategy. I know people are going to start saying, well, what do you mean by strategy tactics? Well, if you want to know, come to training, because you're not getting it here, you know. But what I'm going to say, but on a personal level, does that make a lot more clear sense to you now? I mean, about the whole, you know, what I was doing there about the tactics and the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, the stuff that I do, like what you were going into earlier about the vibes of situations and de-escalating situations and reading situations and stuff like that. That's all a strategy and tactics-based approach. Or, you know, it's like being able to extract yourself from situations with minimal damage to yourself. I think that's the way you put it. And I think it's also like that works in every situation, but it just, like, in situations where there's no going back, it means you're gonna have to hurt or kill someone or something like that. And in other situations that are less extreme, you do the appropriate thing. You make the appropriate action that guarantees your personal safety to the best of your ability, whatever that is. And, you know, if it means fighting someone or to the death or whatever, then so be it. But that's the end, not the, you know, not that every time it happens or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's kind of hard dancing around these topics. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to try to explain things in a way that people are going to understand something without just going into it in detail, and they still won't understand it because they won't have had done the training. You know, so this stuff is experiential knowledge. It's, you know, you can't. Just like everything else, you don't know what being a surgeon is like until you've operated. You know, you don't know what being a pilot is like until you've actually flown the plane. And same thing with this. But what I'm hinting at is the factor that you got people out there who are promoting that they're doing something, like you said, self-defense, you know, or they're doing sport fighting, and it has this, but it also can work as self-defense. It's the wrong investment of time and energy. I mean, you know that. Like, saying it, like, if you're saying you're going to work out, fine. I have no problem with anybody doing anything. If you say it's all for exercise, I don't, you know, fine. But when this is like the kiddie schools, because that's where the money's at with the kids, and they try to tell people that they're training these, you know, 5-year-olds and these 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, that they're teaching them how to fight and defend themselves? No, they're not. No, they are not, you know. And I think I said this in one of the other things. Get a kid that is 10 years old that's doing boxing or wrestling. He will beat the shit out of a kid that's doing some stupid, you know, going to some martial arts traditional school. He will beat the shit out of him, you know. And they say he's learning defense. No, you have a glorified daycare center, and regardless of how you try to paint it, that's what it is. That's how you make your money, because you're a daycare center and you're trying to. You know, there's a lot to talk about with that. But my point being is, I'm being a watchdog here and saying, if you're saying you're teaching self-defense and you're not, I'm going to call you out on it, you know? And those kids' classes aren't doing that. And people are saying, hey, you're learning sport fighting and you're also learning self-defense. No, you're not. You're trying to say that because you know now, you don't hit people in the street with your fist. You don't do it. And a lot of people who've broken fists will tell you, yeah, they don't do that now either, or they try not to. But the factor being is, if you want to learn self-protection and self-defense, you're wasting a lot of your energy. Like you were talking about return on investment. That's really what you were saying earlier about you want to do something and make sure you get the most out of it. That's your return on investment of doing sport fighting, trying to think it's self-defense, or if even worse, you're doing traditional martial arts that don't touch each other or doing, you know, there's no contact. You are not getting self-defense. You're getting other people telling you that you got self-defense, but you don't have self-defense. And the actual time period, like, you know, I mean, look at the last camp, that was 10 hours. How much better were people after 10 hours, you know? 10 hours, 2 days. Yeah. How much better were people after 10 hours, you know? And what are you going to do with 10 hours of sport training? You're not going to be doing anything, are you? You know, you're still going to be wrapping your hands, you know? You're going to be wrapping your hands and trying to learn how to kick still, you know, or punch still. You're going to get nowhere. What I'm saying is, if you really want a return on investment, you got to go train with us, basically, because I mean, and you know that, and you know, I mean, hey, let's be shameless here and be real about it. This is what I do, you know, and this is, I think, why you gravitated towards it. It's because you're getting the most return on your time you know, I mean,
time, money,
and
yeah, man. So
I mean,
I totally agree with that. And I think the reason that it's hard to get people to see that is just because they've never done it before. And in this world, there are so many people who offer sort of, like they have the answer to everything. Everybody's got the answer to everything in their own little world of what they've trained and what they've done. And if they don't have any watchdogs around them or any people to keep them in check, they're going to think they've reached the pinnacle and they're the top dog in their little circle. And, you know, then they go out and they get their ass beat or whatever. Like they're,
well, you know, I mean, we could go on and on about this, and the only reason that I'm talking about this is because I get a lot of questions about the you know, what went on at the Combat Judo Alpha Camp, and there's a lot of people who want to know, but it's like all you guys who went, everybody liked it. Number one, you know, everybody liked it, and there were guys, there was at least never done anything before. You remember Brian, you know, I mean, he made huge gains in those 2 days from nothing. So basically, and as you saw, because you had never been exposed to that type of training, it's effective as hell, isn't it? it's effective as hell, and it's also very fast. I mean, it seems like you're a lot of time, but in reality, it's not a lot of time, is it? I mean, reality, but it seems like at the time, man, this is going on forever, you know, which is what it's supposed to be like. But I just want to say that, you know, people, that's what I wanted to say. What got you here is because people say, well, you know, it can't be anything that is not known. It's like, yeah, just because you don't know it, it's like you don't know it. You know, it's like, that's kind of the key here. The key here is the factor that you're learning something in a much faster way that has nothing to do with sports stuff. And what I wanted to say, because we'll kind of give this out, but ever since you, did you ever get the training, the tires? Did you ever get the tires? Because I mean, that changes your world completely, doesn't it? I mean, the idea of getting away from sport training devices. Getting away from those sport training devices is a huge mindset change, isn't it? And it also
it is.
Yeah.
Just there are simple things you can do with, like, to shift your training from sport training to real training. I'm gonna let you go into as much as you want to go into on that. I don't want to go into that, but I just do want to say that I guess so. What we're kind of getting at here is it's not quantity of training, it's quality of training. It's not putting in the hours, it's putting in the hours of the right stuff or whatever. Like, the paradigm shift is the most important thing.
It's the depth. It's the depth of what you're doing. It's the depth of what you're doing, you know? And but I mean, those tires change your whole framework on what's real, don't they? I mean, they change your whole framework on what's going to work, and there's no lying with those things. There's no lying, is there? There's no lying. I mean, that's the only thing I'm giving out here. The only thing we're giving out right now is that, man, that changes everything, and there's no lying to yourself about what you can really do with that, right? And there's no lying about what's going to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
So
sure, but, yeah. I guess, yeah, and that's a good thing to have in training, is stuff where you can't, that makes it impossible to cheat yourself. Like, it's all very well to say, like, I can do this or I can do that, but a lot of times when you do it, like, your will fails you because it's too hard. Like, so for example, like, you climb a mountain and you get to the top and you say to yourself, wow, I'm so tired, I can't make it back. But you have no choice but to make it back because you've already gone that far. You know, so if you can get past the mental block of putting yourself in a situation where you have no choice but to survive or die, to evolve or perish, then you're going to find out about yourself real quick, and you're going to learn and you're going to grow, you know?
Yeah. Well, anyway, so, I mean, that's good. I just thought we'd, you know, put that out there as a sort of a tidbit for people. But we've, you know, covered quite a bit here. And I don't want to start getting off into different directions. So we're gonna end it. We're gonna end it for everybody. And I just want to recommend everybody. That I just posted on the combat-judo.com when the next camp is going to be, and then I'm working on another camp in a different part of the world after that. But let's just talk about the one that's in December. There's one in December, so you can look on combat-judo.com for that. You can get on the Facebook groups, Combat Judo Group, Tiger Clan. Also, there's my page of the Clugston Combat Systems page. And if you want to know stuff up front, get on the email list. And if you don't want to be on the email list, then can't help you. But fluidfighting.com is my main website. You can get, that's where there's a lot of information on there at fluidfighting.com. But anyway, I just want to get that out there to everybody. And we covered quite a bit. Look back over the 3 reasons that we said them several times about why we all gave up what we were doing before and have progressed to the stage that we're at on this martial arts journey. If you want, I like to say combat science journey, because actually part of what I did was leave behind the martial arts terminology because it's been warped too much and changed. Some guy got an argument with me. Martial arts doesn't mean what you're saying it means. Yeah, martial means war. So these are war arts. But I know you've all changed it to 5-year-olds at Taekwondo schools getting black belts. you know.
Sure, man.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, so that just brought like one of the schools in the area like does social media stuff, and they post pictures of their classes and stuff. And one of the ones that just made me go, oh God, what is going on? Is like a picture of two blah 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 warriors at play, and it's like warriors don't play. War is war. It's killing people, you know. So this sort of false idea that everybody's this friendly ninja or this like awesome person who could kill you with their bare hands, but they just don't want to because they're so friendly. I think that kind of that grasps a lot of people's mind, and that kind of they're infatuated with that, and it's nothing like reality at all, and it's nothing like a real situation. And you know, it's just for like, oh, look at me, I'm doing something, when you're not really doing something, you know.
Yeah.
You're not really doing something. You're not really getting into anything serious. You're not being a security guard in a rough area of town. You're not being a bouncer at a dive bar. You're not doing, you know, you're not going to war. You're not doing anything where you're putting your body and your mind and yourself in serious danger. You're just doing something to feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Being a warrior at play. Like get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So what we should say here is that you got to be real then, right? You got to be real. And what they used to say in the 90s, you know, too legit to quit. Too legit to quit. So too legit to quit. I thought about bringing that back and putting it on a shirt. But the factor is, yeah, that's a good place to leave it off, you know, because people should be pondering about that. It's a good point to leave it off for everybody. So we'll be talking to you soon again. Sam will be back also at some juncture here. And anyway, so thanks for watching. And as I was trying to say before, like this video, share this video, and subscribe if you want to. I mean, I also got language stuff coming out, and I got big news coming on language things, by the way, for those other people. But okay, so anyway, hang on, Sam. I'm just going to shut us off of the broadcast. All right, so everybody, check us out on Facebook and everywhere else.
Have a good